Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Do paranormal parasites have names? Are ghosts really the remnants of dead people? Could people reincarnate as aliens?
Greetings and welcome to the 863rd edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and those diverse questions came from my co-host, partner in paranormal adventures, and dad, Paul. Our scheduled guests today had to reschedule, unfortunately, so we will bring you a sort of improv open-line show instead, and we welcome your calls. The number is 401-766-1240 from anywhere, or email Paul at behindtheparanormal.com, or contact us via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Now, Shane Searway, our honored guest co-host for these open-line shows, was unable to join us because of the short notice, but we will press on. All right, so we have, I don't even know where to begin here. So many questions. Okay, well, Ben's doing the producer thing. Okay. Do we have a caller already?
We do, and it is the, not only, wow, I really messed that up. It is the great Susan Schooler.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I was trying to keep you in suspense.
All right, I don't need suspense at my age, thank you. Susan, welcome back to the show. What's cooking?
Hi, Paul.
Perfect timing.
What's the joke? How do you keep a turkey in suspense?
I can't hear that.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. It is,
okay.
It's the AC.
Okay.
You should be able to hear it now. Can you hear it better?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Okay. So the joke goes, how do you keep a turkey in suspense?
How?
Well,
I don't know. Hope the turkey isn't me.
I'll tell you later.
Oh. Okay, Susan, you're on a roll. So what else is cooking here?
Oh, I'm just calling to alert everyone of the Greater New England UFO Conference and Film Festival. We will be meeting at the Wilton Town Hall Theater in Wilton, New Hampshire, and that will be the weekend, Columbus Day weekend, October 9th to the 11th. And we will be honoring you, Paul Eno, at this event on Saturday evening. And then you'll be doing your show on the Sunday.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. We were talking about that just before we went on the air today, and we like doing shows remotely, and especially with our good friends in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So
it's always a thrill.
It's always a thrill, and there are always unexpected, ups and downs, and usually ups. So we're looking forward to that. And our guest that day will be Nigel Watson, the British UFO expert and researcher and author, who'll be joining us remotely, of course. And we're looking forward to that. And then we're going to have some discussion with the audience and do what we can. So it should be great.
That's absolutely. Did you want me to read off some of the meets we're going to be having?
Yeah, please.
For some of the movies. I'm still putting the schedule together, but we'll be having Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton's movie. Day the Earth Stood Still, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Queen of Outer Space from 1958, starring Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Oh my goodness!
War of the Worlds, 1953 version. We're probably looking at having This Island Earth. We might be playing The Blob, depending on timing. Fire Maidens of Outer Space from 1956. It came from outer space from 1953. And we're also looking at Teenagers from Outer Space from 1959. And I'm just still waiting on the arrival of the UFO incident, the Betty and Barney Hill story. And then on Saturday afternoon, we'll be having the 1929 classic Woman in the Moon. And Jeff Rapsis will be playing the piano to that. That's one of the first. That's the first UFO movie that was, or space movie that was put out. And so he'll be playing the piano as many other of the silent films that the Wilton Town Hall Theater plays. The Wilton Town Hall Theater is haunted, of course, and it was built back in the 1800s. They used to have vaudeville there, which is very exciting.
Oh yeah, I'm excited already. That's really amazing. Well, Ben's going to be up there, of course, for the show, and then whatever else he can spare the time for. But I'll be up there, hopefully, for the whole event, and we're just looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'll be there with bells on.
And we'll be playing Bigfoot movies as well. The Boggy, what's that?
Legend of Boggy Creek.
Legend of Boggy Creek.
Oh, I saw that in the drive-in theater when it first came out. Oh dear.
I thought that was pretty creepy. Having it at you're at the drive-in and the drive knows what's around you, right?
Oh, I know it. It's a long story, but it was an experience.
Oh my word. We'll also be playing the premiere playing of Alexander Petticott's Lions of the East as part of the
I'm in that
series, and then we'll be playing other on the trail of a couple of his videos on the trail of Bigfoot, on the trail of UFOs. So he'll be helping out with that as well.
And it's better and better.
Interesting. I have a lot of surprises.
Sounds great.
As I always do. So.
Well, Susan, after being laid up in lockdowns and everything else for the past almost months and months, I think it'll be a real cathartic event to just get out and do something. That's great.
Absolutely. And everyone, we ask everyone to wear a mask, and then once they're seated in the
theater, I may be on the other side of the room, but we'll be there.
Yeah, but that's okay. And the website is newenglandufo.com, and we're selling tickets to Eventbrite, and then there's a link on the website that says buy tickets here, or people can buy them at the door.
Outstanding.
So.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Call again next week. We'll keep this in front of people.
Absolutely.
Very
Thank you
good.
so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you guys. And have a wonderful day.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
All right.
Take care. Okay, Ben, you owe me something.
I know. I was just thinking that now.
Oh, good.
All right, get back to me.
You got it.
Take care.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Well, excuse me. Well, how do we top that? Well, I guess we go to Peter from Bogota, Colombia, who is a very faithful listener and sends in really, really interesting questions.
We have it separately this time.
We have it separately, yes.
Yes.
Those are our questions that came in on Facebook.
I'm pretty used to being in the packet, so to speak.
A couple of them go back to 2012, but we're getting there.
So Peter writes to us, do you have any contact with the father of Paranormal Mystery Radio, Long John Nebel, or the famous researcher Hans Holzer?
Okay. I'm wondering, Peter, how old you actually think I am. Long John Nebel, who was born in 1911, went on the air in 1954, and he had a very stellar career, with New York radio, WOR, WNBC, etc. I was 1 year old when he went on the air, and in 1977, when he, I believe that was his last year on the air, I was in the seminary and I was 24 years old. Unfortunately, I did not have any contact with him. However, our good friend and an occasional co-host of this show, Tim Beckley, who was a legend in the UFO community, was on the air with Long John Nebel a number of times, and was sort of a fixture on his show for a while. And he has told us many stories about him. He is when Nebel first went on the air in 1954. There was a lot of skepticism about whether a show about the paranormal could have any success. But the managers of the radio stations he was on were astounded at the success that immediately came to the late night slot that Long John Nebel filled. And he was certainly a precursor to the modern Coast to Coast AM, and which is hosted pretty much by George Nuri and George Knapp and a few other friends of ours too. And it was very successful. So he was when he went off the air in '77, he was succeeded by, of all people, Larry King. And now Larry King did not do a paranormal show, but occasionally he will. I know that he had Stanton Friedman on more than once, in more recent years. So it was a long story, but that's a long way of saying I did not know Long John Nebel. Now the other thing that is asked in the question here by Peter is Hans Holzer. Certainly a legend in the 20th century paranormal community. He was, there were sort of 19th century legends like, and early 20th century like Harry Price, people like that. But Hans Holzer, who was born in 1920, so he was younger than Long John Nagle. I did not know him either, I'm afraid. Now, he was around till 2009. I know that he knew about us, but somehow we never really made the connection. I think the Warrens knew him, Ed and Lorraine Warren, because Ed referred to having met him. And I know that when it came to the Amityville horror case in the 1970s, Hans Holzer was involved in that and even wrote a book about it. Now, because I'm about the only one who was not involved in that case because of my seminary schedule. I was at the other end of the state during that. Lorraine Warren wrote me letters during that case. However, which I'm rather skeptical of anyway. So I did not know either Long John Nagle or Hans Holzer, but I know people who did know them. So that's probably not a very satisfying answer, but that's essentially what the case is. So what's number 2 here?
Oh, yes. So number 2 is, in a couple of your past shows, I asked guests about names the entities used for themselves and got the response that they do not give themselves names. Is this also true in your case of parasites? I understand you've given names for the various species of parasites, but do they have their own names? And there's a third part, which is I am still unclear on how you communicate with them, or how they communicate with you.
All right. Well, out of the names, I mean, you mean like Steve or something? I don't know.
I am Steve the Parasite.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't mean to make fun of the question. It's a good question. We have, and I did not, I think that was a guest who said that they do not give themselves names. It wasn't us, I don't think. Now, that being said, in my last book, Dancing Past the Graveyard, came out last year, I said all kinds of things, wrote all kinds of things that I did not ever want to write about earlier. But as I've often said, you get to a certain age and you just don't care what people think. Because a lot of it, particularly at the end, it sounds like where there's a section on what ghosts have to say about God, a question that ought to be dealt with perhaps a little more. And I think the answer is being somewhat surprising. I just didn't want to write about these things because it sounded as if I'm doing the medium thing. And we're always advising people not to do that, don't trust it. But make a long story short, I have run into a lot of entities with names, and I believe these were just people. Probably the strangest one was in 1986, 1987, and I communicated with this entity 8 times, and I don't mean I sat down and did a seance. I don't mean I sat there and tried to communicate. I sat there in a meditative state, and I met another person who, in my opinion, was in a parallel world, not something. Nobody was dead or anything like that. That's not our theory or our method. But this was right near here where we're broadcasting from. It was in Cumberland, Rhode Island, in a archaeological site, and I happened to be in the enviable position of being vice chairman of the Historic District Zoning Commission, so I was allowed access to sites, archaeological sites in the area that most people would not be allowed to enter. This particular woman, she said, and again, it can be difficult. You actually do sort of hear you know how when you're on the verge of sleep, you often will hear a voice or a dog or something, and it's very strange. It's a sort of a phenomenon, and I don't know how paranormal it is, but it's just a point where you're in a hypnagogic state where it's more you're susceptible to what I think are stimuli from other realities. So this Native American First Nations woman said her name was Wessawonk. And I looked at I had to look it up because her English was terrible, and a lot of the words were Algonquian, and I had to look up what they meant. And you run into this. Not everybody speaks English among our neighbors out there, and a lot of them are not verbal at all, and it can be very difficult. But Wessawonk means name, so her name was Name. But I got clearly the idea that this is what her name was. I don't know. Maybe I got it wrong, but that as far as names are concerned, that's a very strange name. I run into Bob, who was stuck in a church in Virginia. His memory changed as we spoke. Gilbert in Ogdensburg, New York, when I was a seminary student there. And Vera in California. Richard in a world of endless aloneness. I suspect that he was a suicide. And again, not ghosts, actual people, body and all, living in parallel realities. This is part of what we refer to as the progressive approach to the paranormal. Ideas that are not necessarily our own, but that we have found to be true. And the progressive, I use that without any political overtones intended. So, Ben, any thoughts on this? But parasites, I think he's right. I have not encountered any that have names except during exorcisms. Okay? And I'm thinking particularly of the one that comes up now in the 1973, the exorcism of Barbara at the St. Lawrence State Hospital. Of course, a very hush-hush. Doctor was present. I was present as an assistant to the priest who was performing this. And this is all in the book, Dancing Past the Graveyard. But in the exorcism ritual of the Roman Catholic Church, anyway, there is a demand that the entity give its name. This, and I asked Father Lawrence, that's his first name, why do we believe these things? I mean, when it gives its name, and they don't always do. But he said, well, they're bound by the authority of Christ to give the name and to that it be correct. But I mean, this particular thing's name was Chow, so it said. That's what the girl said too. But I didn't necessarily believe it, and all kinds of problems resulted because it knew that I was being skeptical and all this. But whatever. They do tend to give names, not always, but sometimes. So whether that's actually their name, I don't know. So I suppose from that point of view, parasites, which I think do this, as opposed to the folklorish idea of demons, they do give names, but I don't necessarily believe them, because I think they use the exorcism ritual against us. I think that they feed upon it and get stronger at times. They do what we want them to do in order to push our buttons. So I'm a minority voice in this field, and as I am in just about everything else in the field.
Well, I think it's a logical thing to do, right? If you walk into a situation and you're meeting somebody, there's a few things that you do. What's the first thing you do when you meet somebody?
Well, you shake their hand, or you used to in the old world.
Well, along with shaking their hand.
You give your name.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing you do.
And that gives them power over you.
Right. Well,
I mean, according to ancient belief,
right,
names were powerful.
Well, handshaking is also another symbol of saying I don't have any weapons.
Exactly.
Me, right.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, hey, I'm not gonna attack you, bud. You know, my name is blank, and whatever. But that's a human thing to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I've never thought of asking for names. That's just because it's just not my assumption.
Yeah, you're right.
I've never thought to ask, never cared to ask, because it's not the first thing you do. But if your assumption is, oh well, it's dead people, the first thing you do is, this is a person. I will ask for a name. Or in this case, I assume that this is a fallen angel. Typically, angels have names. You ask for the name, and that's just, it's the assumption, right? Because you assume that it's human to human, and not human to alien, right?
You're right. Yeah.
So look at ETs, right? They never give themselves.
Yeah, but do they have names too?
That's the question, right? You never, say somebody's, having an abduction experience, they're not going to say, "Oh, hi, my name's Bill. What's your name?"
Oh, Jack the ET.
Right. You assume that that they never give names, right? That's just
there are some cases that I'm very skeptical about where they sometimes do give names.
Right, but that's maybe it's from studying human behavior and seeing, it makes them more comfortable if you know a name, assuming that there is an actual name, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, anything that's been among us for a while kind of learns our quirks and habits, and if there's any sort of thing that understands this, it's parasites.
Yeah, you're right.
That they would know, this would make them feel more comfortable, therefore I can slip in by giving them a name.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, Peter. I've never thought of asking. Never thought of it. Never cared to, because I know I'm not dealing with another human.
Yeah, it would. I think it would be a distraction.
Right.
You don't want to get chummy with these things. You know?
Right. That's the assumption.
Yeah.
If you're saying, oh well, my name is Ben, that's almost like you're giving up power to whatever this thing is, whatever that may mean, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of my first answer to the question. And the second one, it would be kind of along the same lines. Yeah, that it's like, I think communicating is the wrong word. What are we looking at?
Yeah, everybody's looking at me and you're talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep switching back and forth. I apologize. I got caught on a train of thought, and now I lost it. Nope.
I'm sorry.
No, how dare you? No, but thank you for reminding me to press the right button. Anyway, where was I going with this? I was going along the train of thought of
ETs and the names and.
I was a little further. I think I developed it a little more at that point, which would be communicating, right?
Yeah.
I think communicating is a really bad word for it. I think that assumes that there's verbal contact of some sort, and it's not, right? I think that the assumption is that we're sort of yelling into the vast emptiness of a space, and we get to the point where it's like that's kind of where we are. Oh, that.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not easily startled, but our
thank
beloved station manager came in and scared me.
He does know how to get the drop on us.
That's right. Yes, that's why he's the station manager.
I mean,
we're not.
That is a very good point. Right. That's sort of one of the top qualities. Being
able to
being silent.
Anyway,
you guys are talking about poltergeists and ghosts. I walk in and you're scared.
Well,
what does that say?
It's not scared. It's startled. There's a difference.
Okay.
We'll change the subject.
Anyway, communication's a bad word for it, because that assumes that we're walking in and we're sort of yelling into the vastness of space. Give me your name. Give me your whatever. Communicate. And that's not really what it is. It's more of understanding rather than communicating. The English language is just vastly unprepared to talk about any of this, because it's, you say one word and it portrays a false picture of what's happening. And, the sort of assumption is that you, Father, in your example, are sitting on a rock, and, this Algonquian woman comes up and says her name is Name, if that's what she says.
I was sitting on a rock, actually.
Or maybe she's asking a question, which is, what is your name?
Perhaps, yeah.
And who knows, right? That's the thing, is that it's not quite communication as much as it is understanding of the other in this instance. And I think that the way that we're sort of seeing this picture is more of that. We're seeing a picture. And much like a painting, sort of looking at it, we don't yell at the painting, what do you mean? We try to understand what it is. And I think that's more of where we are at in sort of this quote-unquote communication process. It's more of an understanding of where the other is at versus, belting questions at it and berating it to try and understand what it is.
Well, a lot of groups seem to do that. They'll go in. A term came up in the Warren documentary that we were in, the Devil's Road, the true story of Ed and Lorraine Warren on the Travel Channel. I guess that debuted on Labor Day, September 7th. The term religious provocation, which I think is a very bad idea. I think that was a later development maybe in the Warrens, because I never saw them do that when I was around in the 70s. But be that as it may, these are all things that might involve using a name and asking and doing exactly what you said not to do, which I think is very wise. Questions back and forth and all that. Anyway, it is a matter of understanding. It's very well put.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the last bit of Peter's question?
He was just unclear on how the communication worked.
Okay.
That was the last bit.
It's very different, and again, I don't want people to think I don't think I was ever doing the mediumistic thing. It was always meditative state, and it's an encounter. And very often they were afraid of me because they thought I was a ghost. I mean, the same kind of thing that we would see in some cases where you're just dealing with someone on the other side of the membrane, as a physicist would call it, which might be plasma charged, and they'd see you as glowing or whatever. And it's just a matter of, as Ben said understanding. A matter of understanding. Me, I do hear the voices in my ear sometimes, the spatial. And I haven't done this for a long time. I don't recommend it. I don't make a habit of it. It's just sort of things that happen in an attempt to understand what was going on in a so-called haunted house.
Irony.
Yeah. So it's up by the ceiling or it's down, and sometimes it's very strange spatial relationships. That's one of the oddities about the physics involved here. So that's essentially how it takes. It's verbal with me. Sometimes, as I say, there's a language barrier. Language I never even heard, never mind could understand. I've had communications encounters in a very strange form of Latin. And again, it all depends. I mean, it's a very big multiverse out there, and there are a lot of neighbors, and some are, most are okay, neutral. Others are very hostile, and some just can't communicate. It's quite the first day of school in that sense. But I think the whole medium thing is not only a mistake, but a wrong approach. Anyway, so.
Well, on that note, we should probably head to a break.
Yes.
Already
halfway through. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. We will be right back.
The night is alive. Join us and take a walk on the weird side when you tune in to The Kingdom of Nye, hosted by Heather Wade. The finest in late night talk. Listen live free weeknights starting at 9 p.m. Pacific time at thekingdomofnye.com, talkstreamlive.com, and the Paranormal Radio app. Wanna take a ride?
And we're back Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM. And today I was looking forward to our scheduled guests today because they were sort of a mother-stepdaughter paranormal team, kind of almost like female versions of us, and they even kind of think the same way. They adopt this, what we call sort of a progressive approach to the paranormal, and new ideas and better physics and things of this kind, which we feel is correct. But in any case, they had to reschedule, and we'll be hearing from them later this year, probably in December. So we'll let you know about that. So let's move on to our next question, Ben. Who is it from?
It's not so much a question as it is a statement, but I suppose you can turn it into a question if you'd like, which is Todd from Ohio. And Todd writes to us, over the past 5 years, you have helped me distill my views on the multiverse. During this pivotal time in our world, I would like to think that help might be extended to us from another place. If not, we at least have the assurance that there are plenty of other realities that are healthy and happy.
Yeah, this has come up a lot lately. We have a lot of problems in the country today and in the world. Certainly, not the least of which, of course, is this terrible pandemic. We've all been touched by that one way or the other. And, I guess Todd has a point. Certainly, in the multiverse idea that has been adopted by many physicists, all possibilities are out there in concrete reality somewhere or somewhen. And it all, in our opinion, theologically even, forms a great elegant whole where everything is really complete. It's just that we don't have the awareness of it. Maybe we're not at that point in our evolution, or we're just too narrow in seeing it. So, I think that there are many other worlds where things are quite different, much worse in some cases, or much better in others. What say you, Ben?
It's. I think something to kind of use is realizing that there's kind of a balance that sort of exists in kind of all facets. I think it's really easy to focus on all the negative stuff. It's super easy to. Actually, I remember hearing a statistic, I don't know how true it is, but that human memory, 90% of it is us focusing on bad stuff. 90% of human memory is usually bad stuff.
That's depressing.
Right. Yeah, it is. But the other 10% is usually really good stuff, which is it's kind of something to think about, right? I mean, look at sort of news media, like major news media outlets. 90% of it is usually bad, right? Everything's terrible.
Yeah, speaking from 40 years in journalism, yeah.
Right. Well, it's because for whatever reason, it's very engaging to us, and I think that it's very, very easy to kind of get caught in that sort of that net of focusing on all the bad stuff, which certainly there is, and we shouldn't forget about it. That's kind of being a good citizen, but at the same time, dwelling on it and ruminating is also not helpful either.
Well, one of the good things that I'm always stressing, and we both always stress, is that these separate parts of the multiverse are not mutually exclusive.
No.
They influence each other. They pass through one another. Energy is exchanged. Sometimes even beings are exchanged. Matter as well. And the idea being that the more positive we make our lives in wherever our consciousness is, the more positive our super life will be. That's a term we had to invent just to talk about these concepts. But there are many versions of us in these different worlds, and it's all part of us. And really, we're all part of each other in a very, very real way that it's hard to emphasize how concrete it is. So the more positive we make things in our own world, the more we love our families, the more we fulfill our responsibilities, the more we acts of kindness for other people. Little things, they really add up, and they echo across the multiverse. So we can improve everything by drawing in positive energy. That's our whole parasite solution. When that was, you bring in positive energy to displace the negative energy. It, for one thing, it cuts off the food supply for parasites, and it makes everybody's life better, everywhere and everywhen.
Yeah.
So it's really a very simple answer.
Yeah, and I think that there's this sort of temptation to kind of, assume that everything is separate, nothing touches.
Well, that's the Western. Well, that's really the modern mind.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pigeonhole everything, and you take it apart in order to find out what read instead of putting it together to find out how it works.
Yeah. So I mean, that's easy to do, and I think that that's a really positive, sort of outlook, which is, as rough as things are here, they're not rough everywhere, and as much as life is rough, we have the ability to at least, kind of rise above it in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Okay.
That's kind of the message of that.
Right.
Are you looking for something specific?
No, I'm just looking at the daunting stack of questions we have from listeners.
See, that's why I started crossing them out a while ago, so that we know which ones we answered and which ones we did.
Yeah, well, these go back. Anyway,
that's true.
It's overwhelming.
Well, shall we move on?
Yes, we shall.
Okie dokie. So Michelle from Blackstone, Massachusetts, right here in our listening area, writes to us. Listened to your show for many years. This is the first time I'm writing in. Well, congratulations and thank you. I was ghost hunting until I brought something home with me about 10 years ago. I wish I heard your advice about not ghost hunting before that happened, but I followed your advice and worked hard to make everything positive in my life. Whatever it was left. My question is, why aren't more paranormal researchers using your ideas? I think they would get better results.
All right. Well, I don't want to, but it's funny that what we just said leads right into that question. And we don't want to be self-serving, but
no, because we could be wrong.
Yeah, of course.
But being positive is always helpful.
Oh yeah, nobody's wrong about that. Always be positive, But we're often criticized for criticizing or being overcritical of paranormal investigators. Now, my main criticism is that most of them don't have the background for it, don't have any experience. But the question is, what is the background that you would have to have for this sort of thing? Even clergy, having studied in the seminary for many years, priests are not generally trained about how to deal with this. Neither are other clergy. Certain ones are sort of developed as far as their expertise is concerned in order to deal with it when it comes up. But as a rule, they're not trained. So it's a difficult situation. As far as bringing things home is concerned, that's a story we hear frequently. People, I don't think, have any idea what they're touching, what they're trying to influence. And I cringe especially when ghost hunting groups take it upon themselves to counsel people in homes, or on the other hand, the opposite, which Ben has noticed many times too, is that they pay attention to the phenomena rather than the people. And it's the people who are the root of the phenomena. It's happening because of the people. As Shane Seroy often says, it's people that are haunted, not places. So these are all issues, but I think there are a number of groups who tell us that they are using our methods, and that kind of makes me cringe a little bit too, because regardless of the method or the theory you're using, you're still you're seeking out contact with something that just is not good to be with. Now, on the other side of the coin are people who are minding their own business, and all of a sudden they are confronted with the paranormal. There's an alien abduction experience, or what they believe is that experience. A haunted house kind of thing going on that people just don't expect and just sort of fall in their laps. Things happening spontaneously that they didn't really expect or ring the dinner bell for. So it's a very, very complex issue, and we don't mean to be overcritical. And we, as Ben says, we could be wrong. It works for us, but I don't know. We still think it's best to sort of avoid the entire thing. Except, if you're interested in it, listen to the show. Try to find decent books to read. And there's an awful lot of rubbish out there written about this stuff too. But I don't know. It's just you have to make your own decisions.
Yeah, that's true. I tend to agree. I think kind of positivity is the best policy.
Yeah. That's sort of an ironclad insurance policy for anything in life, normal, paranormal, anything at all. I think it's always good to be positive.
Right, and that doesn't necessarily mean heap positivity on top of problems that you have.
Oh yeah, it doesn't mean being naive.
No. I think there's sort of a lesson to be learned that be positive, but also be cautious. I think that's sort of a good policy in life in general, right?
Yes.
Not everybody has your best interests in mind, and I think that the best thing to do is to be positive but be wary.
Yes,
and that sort of is a good way to be when in doubt, And I think that's sort of like the lowest common denominator, right? Whether you believe our theories or not, I always think it's interesting that whatever the person's belief system that gets brought into the space reflects it. And I don't know if that's a matter of us understanding it or perspective, or if it's sort of like kind of what we expect brings that reality from whatever multiversal place that it is in, kind of brings it through. Not really sure, but all we know is all we know, and it's surprisingly little what we do know, and
exactly.
And if we know it at all, and
yes.
I think that's every day is the first day of school, and basically just stick with what's been working. If it works, chances are there's something good about it.
Mm-hmm. There you are.
Cool.
They know that we know that we know that they know that. Yeah.
I made a plan against your plan to make my plan to make your plan. Alrighty, shall we move on?
We shall.
Okie dokie. Kayla from North Providence, here, more in our listening area, writes to us. Hi, Paul and Ben. What do you think about reincarnation? I wish you would do more shows about it. Could somebody reincarnate as an alien or Bigfoot?
Well, it's funny. Remember that time the producer approached us about doing a TV series on reincarnation, and we were going to investigate that? That never happened, obviously.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. I do remember that. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Well, I did too until this lovely person wrote in about with the question.
And we went to we met that woman who does regression therapy.
Exactly.
Yes. Now it's coming back to me.
Yes. But in any case, reincarnation is problematic. One of the things we've discussed on the show is that, of course, Einstein's special theory of relativity, in his book, 1952 book, Relativity, essentially indicates that all time is just a function of our consciousness. It doesn't really have any objective reality. Time and space really are the same thing, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially the message is there really is no past, there really is no future. It's all simultaneous. We only experience it in a linear way from past to future. That's how we experience it. And one of the drawbacks of, as Ben has pointed out rather eloquently in the past, one of the problems with the human psyche is in human consciousness is that we're very limited. Our paradigm is very narrow, and we don't think there can be anything except past, present, and future in a linear way, because we don't conceive of it any other way. But the science apparently says otherwise. So if there is no past in any objective sense, you can't have past lives in any objective sense. So as a result, that kind of shoots reincarnation in the foot, at least. However, we do have an alternative. In our opinion, these parallel, you've got parallel lives instead of past lives. So I suppose in a way it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And for many, many years, I've always asked regression therapists. And matter of fact, when we met with that time with the producer, we asked this.
Yes.
Do you ever encounter people who describe, when you regress someone, in other words, you hypnotize them, the hypnosis is a separate issue, and you bring them back to quote-unquote past lives. You ask usually, okay, well, what year is it? Or what's your name? Or where are they? All the usual spatial and temporal stuff you would associate with our narrow paradigm. And I always ask, do you ever have someone who says, gives you a date in the future? And I've gotten some very interesting answers in response. I said, funny you should ask. I remember there's one in Vermont, as a matter of fact, told me that just last week somebody told me it was some date in the 22nd century. 2148, I believe it was, or some time around.
Future lives.
Future lives, yeah. Which also would be parallel lives.
Right.
And there have been times when they have not only described dates in our future, what we would consider our future, but worlds that seem completely alien or partially alien. Again, parallel worlds with different laws of physics, all possibilities existing. Yeah, it does sort of fit within that narrative that we stated earlier in the show. So this essentially would take reincarnation ideas to a new level, and one of those levels would be, that you have other forms of life that share your super life. This is rather a shock to some people, but in the exorcisms that I was dealing with as an assistant to a priest, these were, in my opinion, cases in which parasites, who are multiversal creatures more than we are, can access, in my opinion, in our opinion, different worlds to feed, would discover what another term we had to coin called the identity point, at which the parasite is the possessed person and vice versa. The point in the multiverse, the particular world, with alien or not, where this identity point exists. Because I just got the feeling that there was an identity, not to the point where Hollywood would take it and have the quote-unquote demon, controlling the person, floating around the room, although I have seen things like that, that there was a more of a cooperation, almost a federation between the victim and the parasite, the host and the parasite, that can be very close. There was a bonding that takes place, and that essentially is what can happen. So to the point of Kayla's question, yes, I think you can, in a manner of speaking, share the life of an alien in a very real way. It can be part of your super life. Reincarnation in the classical sense, that does not seem to be possible if these laws of physics are accurate and correct. But I think the identity point can exist between you and an alien. Now, and sometimes, whatever you mean by an alien. Now, if you're talking about denizen from outer space, somebody from another planet, sure, that's entirely plausible, I guess. But you also have parasites, which to me are aliens. In that Bridgeport house in 1974, that creature I was facing, I was trying to protect that little girl. This was an alien creature. Now, I don't know if it was from some other planet. It certainly was totally other than human, or any kind of, it wasn't a spirit because of this physical contact. So it was kind of, again, a new experience for me. It shattered my belief system, excuse me, and this sort of thing. So, yeah, anything is possible, but as far as reincarnation as an alien, yeah, I would say you would have to broaden those terms very, very specifically, and it's a much deeper approach, I think, that is possible. But I don't think the term reincarnation. I think it has to be reinterpreted.
That would be my first question, which is what kind of reincarnation are we talking about?
Yeah. Again,
because there's so
define
many,
our terms.
Right. Yeah. Because it's important, right? Because there's the reincarnation sort of defined by whether it's different sort of variations of it in Hinduism or in Buddhism or any other sort of sense, and then there's sort of the westernized modern version of it, which is I'm going to be me now and I want to be me forever.
Yeah.
Which is just very, very narrow, and it's just, that's the question, right? So it's like, we have to kind of understand what we're talking about before we kind of move into that realm. And that sort of idea of being me now is just, and being me forever. That's kind of the problematic portion of it.
Yeah.
Because I think
it's an assumption.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that sort of the way of understanding it in its original sense, I guess, is in itself multiversal in a way. Because if the goal is to kind of move beyond, kind of being where you are in whatever world you are, and kind of moving beyond that, maybe engaging in one sort of quote-unquote super life, perhaps that's really sort of the true way of escaping the eternal cycle. Or, but that's just a different interpretation of an old idea, which is, kind of the one of the major issues anyway, right?
Well, the old ideas are, the older they are, probably the more correct they are, but it's the way we word them and interpret them that will lead to a misunderstanding, perhaps.
Right, again, sort of common denominator, which is we don't really know.
Right. That's essentially
ironically is the common denominator is, at the end of the day, we're not really sure. And I think sort of the search for knowledge, but also being comfortable with the fact that we might not know. I think that's kind of it's oddly a driving factor, uncomfortable, but also trying to find comfort in the uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any more? I didn't put any more than that.
We do have a big one. I don't know if you want to address it now.
Maybe we could start.
I feel like that'd be doing a tremendous disservice.
You think so? Okay. All right.
Personally speaking.
Right. Well, if you think that's long, you should see these. All right. We have a form, an online form people can access to report paranormal experiences, whether they be from the past or recent. And it's behindtheparanormal.com, and there's a link up in the menu to report a paranormal experience. And people very often write in with some very interesting experiences. It didn't happen yesterday, but happened when they were children or something like this. It might shed light on some of the questions people would have. I can at least maybe begin this one.
Might as well.
This is a ghost or ghostly figure or a shadow person, and perhaps maybe where I put the brackets there.
Sure thing. So the brackets are the brackets. So the experience goes as follows: multiple occurrences in a past family home. Throughout the home, many odd things happened, all throughout the house and surrounding property, to include barns, fields, mostly and mainly in the house. Living room, bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens, hallways, dining room were all active. The first time I realized something was odd was one night before we moved in. We were just staying over, and I was sleeping in a spare bedroom and was awoken by a sound of a very large dog coming up the stairs and approaching the door I was in. My future step family had a dog, but I didn't think he was that heavy. I shrugged it off and was trying to get back to sleep, but the dog was in the hallway and was getting closer and sounded really big. The panting sound was way higher from the floor, than it should have been, and it started to growl. I thought the dog might have forgot that I was there, so I called out Rusty. When I realized that the family dog was underneath the bed, whimpering, and it was the bed that I was sleeping on, I could still hear the panting outside the door. I turned on the light and in the room and blasted through the door, hoping to scare whatever it was, more than I was already scared, but there was nothing there. When we moved in, things didn't get any better, nor did it matter whether it was day or night. Things would move as if it would move of their own volition. People would disappear temporarily and come back with no idea that they had been gone. Upright shadow figures would walk through the rooms at all times of day, moving things and sometimes touching people. Radio alarms would go off. Radio alarms could work with no batteries and being unplugged. One of my friends had the great idea of using a Ouija board in the living room. Things got even weirder. Pictures
Shocker.
would fly from shelves without knocking anything off of the shelves in front of them. A set of witch chimes, quote-unquote, would frequently ring with no wind. Cabinets would open by themselves, and the kitchen could rearrange itself during the night. Faces would sometimes peer through windows. Things in the barn would move on their own. Male voices could be heard. When there was nobody else there, there were many witnesses to strange events, including people who did not live in the house. One night I had an invisible something come sit beside me on the bed, put its hand on my leg so firmly that I lifted the covers, and we could see an imprint of the whole hand pressing on my leg. I jumped out of bed and screamed, "No, thank you." Hey, at least
polite anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's probably about all we have time for.
Pretty much.
Textbook, and the name is at the end of those forms. Text. Who's that from?
Tara.
Tara. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Textbook intersect. Another term we had to invent. Intersect point. Multiversal intersect point. Number of worlds existing in the same place. We'll get into this more deeply. We don't have an open line show until November 8th. Or actually,
it's only a few short weeks away.
Yeah, it's only a few weeks away. So anyway, that's about all we'll have time for. But Ben, why don't you start us off on our announcements here?
Alrighty, so let's just hop right into it. The Greater New England UFO Conference will take place at the Wilton Town Hall Theater on Saturday and Sunday, October 10th and 11th. It's only 2 weeks away.
Yeah, and Susan called in earlier, the organizer, and told us about it as well.
I'm excited to watch This Island Earth.
I know.
Because of COVID restrictions, this event has a limited audience. It will be a Bigfoot and UFO film festival. No speakers, no vendors. We will broadcast the show live from the venue on Sunday with a special guest, Nigel Watson, British UFO researcher. There will be a private dinner to honor my dad for his 50 years of paranormal research as well afterwards.
Yeah, NewEnglandUFO.com. You have to reserve in advance. The following week, the Western Connecticut UFO Conference will take place via Facebook Live or Zoom. I'm not sure which. We had a long conversation yesterday. I'm a little confused. I'm going to leave it up to you, Ben. Anyway, it's going to be Saturday and Sunday, October 17th and 18th. It's a free annual event sponsored by the Danbury, Connecticut Public Library. Along with ourselves, speakers will include our own Shane Searway, Mark D'Antonio, along with Linda Zimmerman, Mike Panicello of Connecticut MUFON, and more. On Sunday, we will simulcast our show from here at WOON with special guest Dr. Bill Burns of the UFO Hunters TV series, New York Times bestselling author and publisher of UFO Magazine.
And additionally, we have word that the New England Parafest will take place on April 10th and 11th in 2021 in Kittery, Maine, and that we will do a live broadcast from that show with a panel of the speakers on Sunday the 11th. More information will be forthcoming.
And you can certainly check out our books along with those of our other co-hosts at our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com. We can also find out more about the show, our many cases over the years, public appearances, and how to book us, along with some of our almost 900 free recorded shows from our 12-plus years on the air, including our 4.5-year run on CBS Radio, along with special shows and podcasts.
And past shows back to late 2009 are also available on major podcast platforms, including YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, the Paranormal Radio app, and more. And soon we will have all shows back to 2008 uploaded to these apps. And if you do happen to listen to us on any of those and there's a way to give us a rating or leave a comment, it's nice. It helps us grow our show, helps us know you're listening, and take a little bit of time and do that for us. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, so what's going on next week, Ben?
Alrighty, so next week, October 4th, we will welcome back author and researcher Nadine Lalich, who will address the question, are there ETs among us?
We leave you today with a quote from the 13th century Persian philosopher and theologian Rumi. Everything that is made beautiful and fair and lovely is made for the eye of one who sees. I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno, and thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time, maybe with another Rumi quote, here on Behind the Paranormal. We'll see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.